Welcome to episode 156 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Tommy Nanny, bringing you a fun, exciting show tonight. We're going to do a little derby recap, and we're going to give a Phillies update since we didn't do any last week, and they're surging a little bit. As always, we got the key players with us. My co-host Jason Sayeda.
Hopefully, I don't sound like I'm in a cave this week because I think I fixed my microphone issues.
Yeah, some
Um,
technical difficulties that we think unfortunately, our crack producer Jimmy the Chalk, who is co-hosting it tonight as well, did not discover it in
Uh,
post production.
I mean, I didn't look for it.
A good producer doesn't no can anticipate. Um, but yeah, so we're here. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Giovannina's Pizza. You tried the best. Rest now. Try the best. All right, Kentucky Derby recap. So twofold before we start. One, shout out to Jimmy D for giving us our record-breaking viewership. I think on the podcast. I think the numbers between listens and watches were like 250 or something like that. Is that the highest we've ever had?
Pretty close, and yeah, and just I guess for a reminder for everyone, I don't know where people listen, but if you have not discovered that we are on YouTube and you want to watch us do the podcast, we're also on YouTube. So in case they're just listening through, Apple or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah,
we're
YouTube's always fun. You get to see how the sausage is made a little bit more. But yeah, so shout out to Jimmy D, and also shout out to Jimmy D because anybody that listened to the podcast and watched the races knows that Sovereignty was ultimately the winner of this year's 151st Kentucky Derby, and that was Jimmy D's top selection.
yep.
Sovereignty coming out of the 18 post. So shout out to Jimmy D. I know he brought a lot of seats, and a lot of his friends were listening. So hopefully they cash some tickets. Quickly going through with Sovereignty Journalism, which was kind of the consensus in our pick, finished second. Baeza was third, and fourth is what was that horse? The
Final
Gambit.
Gambit, Final
Final
Gambit.
Gambit. I wrote Queen's Gambit. I knew that there was some kind of Gambit. Final Gambit. So not a bad job by the boys with the handicap. And I mean, all four horses were talked about. Three of the four were definitely like part of the trifecta, superfecta, and even Baeza was um, highly regarded on the podcast. I ultimately decided the 21 post was going to be a little too much to ask, but was a horse that we were looking forward to playing in the Preakness. So uh, good showing by the boys, Jason. I know you watched the replay of it a few times. Your thoughts and what
Yeah,
what you saw coming out of the Derby.
yeah. I mean, I wish I would have stuck with my original. My original thought was like, there's two horses that could win this race, and most likely it's going to be Journalism. But then I started to spread a little more than I probably should have with some bombs that probably realistically didn't have any chance. But I did watch the replay. You know, for whatever reason, Sovereignty was just a little better than Journalism on the day. Whether it was because of the rain, maybe didn't bring out the best in Journalism, or and not that he ran a bad race, but maybe the rain moved up Sovereignty. The one thing I will say about Sovereignty is like his thoroughgraphs were impeccable coming into this race. Like if you guys, I have them written down here. So he started his maiden race with a 9, and then he moved up to a 5. He paired the 5, moved up to a 1, paired the 1 going into the Derby. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
are there
the
better
argument.
thoroughgraphs? Is
It's
there a
always
better
easy.
pattern?
It's always easy to say after the fact, but like you said, there was only two. Like Journalism had the best sheet number, the best paragraph number, but he technically regresses off of his
Right,
best sheet.
right.
Now, the argument could be, is he regress or does he run the thing? But so you can use that logic and say, all right, so say he stays the same and he runs that negative, but Sovereignty improves. They're both right there. So, like you said, I
Yeah,
mean, it was a two-horse race
yeah,
that we turned
yeah.
into more of a two-horse race, at the end of the day, because
And
you knew
yeah,
they were going to be first and second choice, and you're trying
and
to kind of stay
to
away from that.
to be honest, those two horses were not the horses that impressed me the most. The horse that impressed me the most was Baeza. Um, he really was all over the track coming down the stretch. That probably cost him lengths. That at least cost him second. Might have cost him the win. Horse is very talented. Um, you know, going forward, he's going to be tough, man. He's going to be tough in the Belmont, and he might be tough in the 3-year-old races and during the summer and stuff. So he impressed me the most. Final Gambit just basically clunked up like he's been doing. You know, he just was a prototypical clunk up, and closure superfecta horse. I kind of wish we did a reverse superfecta key with him because obviously we would have hit that. Um, Owen Almighty was unbelievable. I mean, for that horse to be up on the pace and hang around for fifth was, again, I don't know if it's aided by the track, the wet track or not, but um, and then the only other thing I'll bring up is Burnham Square kind of got stopped along the rail. I don't think he could have won, but he was definitely a board horse. But the Japanese horse, uh, Meyer Indy or whatever that horse's name was,
Daytona.
Meyer Daytona, just basically stopped in front of him, and he just that was it. It stopped his momentum, and Burnham Square was done. But I guess it was pretty formful. I wound up hitting the try. Should have hit it for twice, but I won't get into why I only hit it once. Um, Broke even on the day. It's better than I usually do on Derby Day, so is what it is. But it's a good race.
Yeah, chalky.
Yeah, I mean Jason pretty much hit on the main points of the race. I didn't watch the replay, so I don't. Jason, if you noticed this, so like just look at the chart. And he finished way back, but it looked like Sandman ran into a lot of trouble too. If you read the lines, got bumped, stopped a couple times. I mean the Sovereignty was obviously a nice horse. We've handicapped a couple races with him, and I said I was wasn't going to use him. Not at the bottom of a try with journalism, but I did end up playing a try with him, singling journalism second, which Jason can vouch for. But ultimately, I'm fine with journalism having been my pick. That would have been a four-digit day for me had he won that race. He didn't. No real excuses unless you want to say the wet track. He's probably he got bumped a little bit and might have been a little further back than he would have liked, but I mean, Sovereignty had to come from way back, and it's not easy to pick closers in the Derby because you got to work your way through 16, 17, 18 horses, but he did it, and so good horse. Give all the credit in the world to Junior for getting the right ride, and it'll be interesting to see him square off. Journalism, I think, is leaning Preakness, but not definite. Sovereignty obviously is not, which we'll talk about. But we'll see. We'll see who goes out into the Preakness from this race, and then I don't know that anybody's a monster, so we should have hopefully some competitive and nice betting races throughout the rest of the 3-year-old season until we get to the fall.
I don't think journalism's going to go to the Preakness. I'm pretty sure he's not. I don't think it's definite that he's not, but I don't think he's going.
Yeah, there's no decision either way so far. But yeah, nothing decided yet.
Yeah, one thing that stood out though to me is, and Jimmy alluded to for closers, it's hard to pick closers to win, but I think the the quality of the field is what really helped Sovereignty, because those horses were just so spread out, because there was like horses just completely stopping, horses that never really even factored in the race. They just kind of clogged along, that it gave Sovereignty the ability to weave through where he needed to weave through. And same with journalism, like he got bumped and got pushed back, but he sat on a pretty open pocket the entire race and never. So like the fact that the horses just were not that good, you didn't see them bunching together. Nobody really made a run, and then you had to go around the horse making a run because you're going. It was like the horses that moved at the end were the only horses moving towards the end.
Basically, I don't know how many times you watched the race, but Alvarado on Sovereignty basically just said, "Okay, journalism's going. I'm going."
Yeah,
He basically just kind of was his fullback.
and
Did
how
it.
often do you see in the Derby though they both get that clean? Like
Yeah,
they didn't even have to go that wide, like around
no,
coming around. It's so there was just a lot of, and it's easy to in hindsight, but there was a lot of bad horses in that race that were complete throwouts. Now sometimes
yeah.
they factor in, and they clog up the hole. They stop. They set up. In this case, they were like so bad that I think it helped. It abated helped the horses from coming from behind, because the better horses were the ones off the lead. It
Yeah.
seemed, even by
One,
Hazen.
yeah. One thing I want to throw in, and not because you and I like this horse, but the ride on like what was the plan on East Avenue? Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he had no chance running
Run four
the
wide off the pace. I know.
yeah. Like
He
is
set he
that,
set a really fast fraction in the bluegrass and hung on for second, almost won.
and
So
you don't
like
put him in the
you
lead.
do
Yeah.
the Evan or Owen Almighty route, and you just blaze them. I mean, you might have just ran them off their feet like he did, and nobody, and still catch it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you always get that. You always get the 1 or 2 or 3 horses that you're like, what was that ride? I don't.
Right.
It's just like
Right.
don't even show up.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jimmy alluded to it. You know, Mott pretty quickly afterwards said he's not running Sovereignty in the Preakness, and I read a tweet or somebody saying like if you have no intention of running horses in all 3 races, if you win the Derby or the Preakness, you shouldn't even be allowed to run in Derby. Obviously, it's not something that could be governed, but but it does raise a good point. I mean, and is this the time that we need to start looking at the spacing of the races, or are we just not now? Like the Preakness might become a good race, but there's nothing on the line. It's just a good race, just like a good race in Saratoga is on a Saturday. Jason?
Yeah, when I first heard that Mott wasn't going to run him, I was kind of pissed at Mott and all. But then, I started thinking about it, and at this point, it's just these horses are bred. They're not bred like they used to be bred. You know what I mean? Like they're so it's probably time to figure out how you could move the Preakness to the first week of June, and then move the Belmont to the first week of July. And logistically you could probably do it, because by next year hopefully Belmont's open, so you can run the race then, and then Saratoga doesn't start till the second week of July anyway, and then just go right to Saratoga after. But for a number of different reasons, the Preakness is just going to, if they keep this where it is 2 weeks from the dirt, it's just going to get worse and worse. It's going to just be such a bad race. I mean, when will they finally decide to do it? When there's like 5 horses in the Preakness and they're basically all, grade 3 horses? Like at some point, that's what it's going to come to, because, these Derby horses are not going to want to run in 2 weeks. And then, obviously most of the good 3-year-olds are in the Derby. So, obviously it won't be the same as, if you win a Triple Crown when it's spaced out, in 8 weeks. It's not going to be the same as when Secretariat won his Triple Crown or Seattle Slew or whatever. But sports evolve over the years. I mean, all of these records in these other sports are not the same as they used to be, because there's more games in NFL. There's more games in baseball. So it just is what it is. I mean, unfortunately, it's just something that they're going to have to decide to move at some point.
Chalky, you share the sentiments or you disagree?
Well, I mean, I think you're coming to a head to this will be a telling year, and I'll tell you why. So, if you look at the handle on the Preakness the last couple years, the Triple Crown races still outdo everything else in terms of a single race. So, Travers, Breeders' Cup Classic, whatever you want to say, the handle on the Triple Crown races are larger. So, does the handle drop without the Derby winner in it because there's a little less interest this year? That'll be maybe a telltale sign to see from a casual fan's perspective what you could end up having. But I mean, if you're talking about race quality, you have to give it serious consideration. And to what Jason's saying, well, if somebody, I mean, we're not going to see it this year, but if Mystic Dan had gotten to Belmont last year, or if Sovereignty had gotten to the Belmont this year, it's a different Triple Crown, because you're running 1.25 miles at Saratoga and not 1.5 miles at Belmont Park. So while each of the operations is independent of the other, and they can do whatever they want. Like Naira already said, well, we were doing this at Belmont, so I think Pimlico is going to have to do what they figure is best to keep the Preakness most relevant, because they're about to redo that whole facility, and right now it's only useful for one weekend a year, so they're going to need a little more activity than that, and they're going to have to figure out placement. Now, Jason's schedule is interesting. I think from just a spacing perspective, it makes sense. I don't know how much, but if you move to the Belmont to July, now you're competing with 4th of July, either on that day, before or after. I don't know that Naira wants to do that with the Belmont, even though they have some big races that day typically. So that might give them a little bit of hesitation. I don't know. But I've also seen people say you move the Preakness as a Derby prep, and I don't know that I like that, because now you're going to downgrade every one of those Derby preps. Well, then you're getting rid
of the Triple Crown. I mean, it's
you
either got to So if you still want the Triple Crown, then
right. But that's the thing. I think if you're Pimlico, obviously you have to figure out what's the best way to keep your race relevant. If that is to move it up, then that's what they should do. I don't know that works. I don't know that it works.
It's going to lose its relevance. People are going to.
Let me ask you this: how about if you move the Preakness to the third leg? So if you keep the Belmont where it is,
I think that changes the trip. I think that changes it more than what you're alluding to.
I think then you'll have. I think you'll have people skip the Belmont in between, because they're not going to run. They might not want to run a mile and a half that fast back from the Derby.
Well, I mean, you're still 5 weeks from the Derby.
Yeah, I think even if you skip races, like, or move the schedule, you're gonna have people that'll skip whatever the second race is still. Now, it won't be you might not lose the Derby winner like you see now. Obviously, they'll keep that going because they'll go for the Triple Crown. But the way these trainers want to run, somebody might skip the Preakness in the first week of June to run the Belmont in the first week of July. That's the way they train horses nowadays.
Yeah. I think it just comes down to like what Jimmy said. It's obviously like, do they see a bump on Triple Crown? Like if a horse is going for a Triple Crown for the individual race, and does it pique your interest? Maybe, but does throughout the horse racing season, do they see a bump because of that? Probably not, right? You're still only getting those 3 weeks or 5 weeks of the Triple Crown races, so each one gets a bump like the Preakness. So meaning, if it's not going to bring any more handle to the Preakness, it's not going to bring any more handle to Belmont, it's not going to bring any more handle to the overall scope of racing. Do they care if a horse is going for the Triple Crown for the runs in the Preakness then? Like if the handle's the same, they don't care that Sovereignty's not running. Yeah. Now if there's a drastic drop and it's because the Triple Crown runner, not that he got hurt, he just said, you know what, I don't feel like running, and then I think you're going to get a serious. But if it's the same as it's been, I don't know if horse racing cares as a sport.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of what the problems outside of like the run by different states, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, it's going to be dollars and cents. If it's going to significantly hurt the handle, which is where they get the takeout, this is their biggest day of the year by far, Pimlico and Maryland Jockey Club. So,
yeah, if for us who want to see a Triple Crown horse run and go for the Triple Crown, then the spacing, we're not looking at the handle. I want to see Sovereignty try to win the Preakness so he has a shot to win the Triple Crown. Yeah. But if the dollars and cents is, then I don't know that the sport itself really cares, unfortunately.
No.
I'll tell you. Good, Jim.
No, the other thing is, the other thing to consider with Pimlico and Maryland is that if they say, well, we want to move a little back, and Naira's like, nah, we're good where we're at, like, who blinks first? Do they just, because they have control over the race, do they just go and say, you know what, we're bumping the Preakness back to Memorial Day weekend maybe or something, and you're talking 3 or 4 weeks, and then see who blinks and see if not, because Naira might say, well, no, Belmont's still going to be 5 weeks after the Derby. You pick which race you want to run in, because nobody's going to run back in a week. They're not going to put the Preakness on the same weekend. That's too much of a. Then you're really first forcing somebody to pick. But if Naira's not willing to play ball because they don't think it fits their schedule, do they tell Pimlico, you do what you got to do, we're staying where we're at, and then does Pimlico blink and say, well, we'll move it back and see if Naira really sticks to leaving the Belmont where it is?
I'll tell you, for me, like I couldn't wait to bet against Sovereignty in the Preakness because closers don't win the Preakness. Like if you
Yeah.
look back at Derby winning closers, they do not win the Preakness. So um, I think that's a missed opportunity for me, anyway.
The
Yeah.
other thing too is, does the Derby lose some of its luster if that Triple Crown, they mess with it where the Preakness isn't the second, and like the whole idea of a Triple Crown is no longer on the table. It's out there, but nobody cares. Does do do people watch the Derby for the Derby, or do you watch? Some people watch it for the chance that I may be seeing a horse that wins the Triple Crown
Yeah,
win the Kentucky Derby. So I'm going to invest my time in this race for future
I still think the
endeavors.
Derby is the Derby. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I can't say it's not going to be affected, but I think it's as close to bulletproof as you're going to get with that kind of
Yeah,
stuff because look at the coverage all day. It's a spectacle. It's who's got the dress and who's got the goofy
That's
hats. How
that,
we're going to show you for the third time today. Every year we show you how to make the mint julep. Like people like that. Like from a ratings perspective and casual betting, the Derby will still be a standout race.
yeah.
With Triple Crown or not. So uh, maybe it loses slight luster, but of the three races, that's by far the one that could afford to take any kind of hit and still get through pretty much unscathed.
Yeah.
okay. Let's move on. Phillies, they're on a little bit of a surge here. They're at up to what, 22-15, game and a half behind the Mets going into the night. They've won, I don't know, what is it? 8 out of 10, 9 out of 12. Does anybody know?
I think
Something like
it's
that though,
eight of
right?
10, I
Nine.
believe. Nine
I
of
thought it was 9 of 11. I think it's 9 of 11, but
9 of 11.
nine of
something
12.
like
Technically 9 of 12 because they lost that first game to the Cubs. But if you go back to
okay,
after the Mets series, it's 9 out of 12.
Yeah,
okay.
and they scored the 7+ runs in, however many, 8 of the 10 of them. So definitely seeing a surge. I think I want to say the last time we covered the Phillies, we were kind of bad mouthing them. Jason, has your tune changed now that it's been 2 weeks or so after?
Yeah, I mean, the Tampa Bay. I don't know how good of a team Tampa Bay is, but we're taping this on a Friday. Last night, the Thursday night game was a hell of a comeback by the Phillies, so that was impressive.
I mean, not for nothing, they did come back against the Diamondbacks too. I mean, they lost in extra innings, but they did.
Yeah,
They
they made
did.
a comeback in that game. Yep. They almost swept them there. I think the staff has been really good. Other than Rangers comeback start was not good, so have to keep an eye on that. But the starting staff has been excellent. Even Nola has bounced back, and Nola has been really good the last two games, and so far through 3 innings, he's pretty good tonight also. Um, I actually threw a bet in today on Schwarber for MVP because he's really, I mean, he's the MVP of this team if you ask me. And I got him at 100 to 1 on FanDuel. I mean, Otani gets hurt. You never know what happens there. So threw a little bet on Schwarber for MVP. Turner. I mean, Turner's been on fire. Um, Turner's been on fire, as I
Now,
believe.
I have a couple notes on Turner. So, do we care that he's now become just a singles machine? I mean,
Well, so I think, and I was watching the pregame show tonight, and they were making a point of like the way guys are going the other way with the ball now, and they're wondering if there's been like a philosophy change um, within kind of like the team. Whereas like, all right, we're not going to try to everybody hits 30 home runs this year. We're going to go the other way with the ball, and we're going to so. Listen, I'm fine with Turner not if Turner hits 15 home runs instead of 25, but he hits 300 instead of 275. I mean, to me, that's what I want to see. I want him on base and causing havoc on base. But Turner's been good and Stott's been really good too. Guys that haven't been good or Harper is in the toilet. Like I don't know what's going on with him. I hate to kill JT because he's so good defensively, and I like him. But I mean, hitting wise, he's been a mess. He hits into a double play like every other bat. And I'm still concerned with the bullpen. I mean, I'm sorry, like, and I know they're on a run and they're on a roll and they're a very good team, but You tell me when it's 3-2 and the starting pitcher is throwing 100 pitches after the sixth inning. Where are we going for 7, 8, and 9? You guys tell me.
Well, I don't know where they're going for 7 there. I feel confident. If they get through 7, I don't know who they go to 8 that I feel confident. And if they
Right.
get through 8, I don't know who they go for 9 that I feel
Well,
confident.
I mean, let's you got to get Alvarado's been pretty
But
good.
do you feel confident?
No, I don't. I think he's more of a setup guy. I'd rather him be the eighth inning guy. So I think the bullpen is going to, a lot of these games they haven't really had that situation, and I'm scared if they do because I don't know if that bullpen's good enough to get through it. So,
No, I tell you what, Kirkring's been a big disappointment this year.
oh my God, don't even get me started with him. He's like a
So-
mop-up guy. They don't even use him now. They put him in when they're up 6 or they're down 6.
Yeah, I think the bullpen is you're not seeing a finished product on that. So we've talked about that in the past. But I have some questions here. But Chalky, overall, I think you were part of the group. Say kind of bad mouthing like we all were.
Yeah, well,
just now 2 weeks.
Recording after getting swept by the Mets was not the best time to get a fair
I'll tell you what,
impartial assessment of it.
You know what the
Yeah.
Phillies need? They just need Jimmy D to give his thoughts on the Phillies.
Yeah.
As soon as he
Then
gets,
they skyrocket.
they do the
after that.
opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he got 70, but man, did he really turn the Phillies around?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like, are they still in the mix of World Series? Sure. Do I think they're like better off than I felt a couple weeks ago? I mean, the concerns are the same with the bullpen. You need a bullpen to win the World Series unless you're going to score 7 runs a game, which they won't. Their base running has been a little suspect. Castellanos was thrown out at second as we were recording this. But 9 out of 12, and the Cubs are a first place team. Diamondbacks were over 500 at the time, and they're in the toughest division in the league right now. And they were ahead of the wild card of the Phillies at the time. So it's not, and Washington is a team on the come, but they're not great. But I mean, so they didn't play, Rockies, Marlins, and some other dog like to get 9 out of 12. I'm okay with Turner being what he is if he's going to hit 300. Like, I'll trade 10 home runs for 300 and consistent, like not streaky.
Yeah, the only problem is right now you're trading more than 10 home runs.
Well, I'm saying
if
if you're expecting 25, if you want 30 or at least 25, and you're going to get 15.
I don't know if he's getting 15.
Well, he may not. He may. We'll see if we'll see if he gets a little hotter as the weather gets warmer. But as far as hitting it long, but if you're hitting second, no, so if you can get guys consistently on, Harper's going to come around to some extent. Now, maybe, he's been in a funk for almost a full season-ish because it was like July or August last year. His stats haven't been all that great since then.
Don't get too much into Harper because I got something.
Yeah.
That's the side topic.
But, if these guys get on base, there's going to be chances to get them home. So, again, I'm fine with Turner hitting less home runs. He could be more of a punch and Judy hitter if he's going to hit 3-something and be consistent instead of extremely streaky, which we've seen over the last 2 years. So, and as a staff, that was obviously looking to be one of their strengths. It's where they improved the most. The Walker in the bullpen experiment was 1 for 1 as far as success, but I can't see that likely being a good long-term solution. But you'll let it play out. But we'll see. So. It's been a good streak, so when hopefully they won't give us a chance to badmouth them again. But if they do, maybe we should just do it anyway to get them fired up. Obviously, the influence. Not only do you get good betting tips, we have a strong influence on this podcast with our opinion that gets out there and gets the clubs listening to us, and they start playing a little better.
I mean, as many views as we got last week, you never know.
Yeah.
There's Phillies executives listening, I'm sure.
Look, we can only comment on the games that they're playing and what we see in front of us. We can't comment on what they're going to do in August when August didn't happen yet. So, like, the Meekers that come on and say, well, it's April, we can only, they're going to, you think they played in the back of their baseball card. Like, we can't say it. We can only comment on what we see. So when they're playing lousy like they were, we say they're playing, and do we think they can come out of it? Yes or no. But, like, you can't just because at a certain point that only goes so far, and when it's September and they're still not in the playoffs, like it doesn't always work out that way just because it has in the past, and that's something that I have with Harper. But one thing I think that you guys didn't touch on that I mean I'll be the first to admit it, the lineup change. I mean putting Stott one, and Stott. I mean, he changed his approach. Like the guy sees more pitches than anybody in baseball, I think, at this point, and you got to give him credit for that.
He's second.
Yeah, I
Second
mean,
in pitches per at bat. I forget who's first now that you said it, but he's second.
so like I don't know what he is as comparative, Bill, because we used to talk about the on base percentage with Schwarber versus Stott, and I know he's actually going to still be less than Schwarber, obviously, and I don't know what he is if you compare him to other leadoff hitters, but the fact that he's seeing does make a difference in your lineup. Like seeing more pitches, it sets up Turner for better success. So I think you got to give Topper credit, and you got to give a lot of fans who have said it. I was not a Stott leadoff guy. So I'll eat crow on that one, but I think that's been pretty huge, and you probably found your lineup, right? I don't think you need to tinker with the lineup at this point. I think Stott's your guy for one, and Turner's two, Harper's three, Schwarber's four, righty, lefty, it doesn't matter, and then you can mess around, move guys as they get hot and cold. I mean Kepler's hitting, so you want to have him in that middle, but I think that's huge in this little run that we're seeing. First of all, and it is correlating to runs.
So real quick, I was
Jim.
gonna say, so coming into tonight, Stott is tied for second in the majors at pitches per at bat with Matt Olson, leading at 4.51. Leading the league at 4.58 is Max Muncy, who I can vouch for as I drafted him, is not turning that into quality at bats in the end, but. Start seeing pitches.
And as a leadoff hitter, sometimes obviously get on bases. You want to get on base, but the job of a leadoff hitter is to see pitches, to get the pitcher to throw his repertoire out there, to help set up the lineup for as the game goes on. So Muncy, who's not the leadoff hitter, right? I'm assuming.
No, he's like 7 or 8 in the lineup.
It's not as beneficial for him to see pitches as it is for Stott to see pitches. Like if I'm the Dodgers, I want Muncy to produce runs and hit the ball, not see 10 pitches.
The best I ever saw was 93 Dykstra. That was the best leadoff hitter. I mean, I know Ricky Henderson.
But a big part of it was he got pitchers to throw their pitchers and to get to feel pressure on that first at bat of the game. They're working a 3-2 count. It makes a difference.
You want to see a leadoff hitter? Go watch 1993 Lenny Dykstra. I mean, that's all I have to say. Guy was unbelievable that year.
So that I thought to me that was kind of the big tweak that has made a difference. Now, a couple things I'll throw out to you guys. Before I get into a little bit of Harper. So we covered the bullpen, we kind of think Jimmy alluded to base running. I mean, defensive base running is still kind of they play stupid. They make a lot of mistakes. I don't know if it'll ultimately hurt them, but they're not the best fundamental team that's out there.
Well, you when you have Johan Rojas on your team, that's going to bring down your baseball IQ, by double digits.
Now, one thing I do have written here is Rojas has produced. Now, do we think he's a 300 hitter? No, but he's turned it around to look like a major league hitter. No,
he's learning how to slap the ball. Right,
he got a nice bunt down the other night.
Yeah, a guy like him's got to slap the ball on the ground. Go look at Vince Coleman, the way he used to play. He couldn't hit, but he would slap the ball on the ground, and he was so fast, it's a single because you can't throw him out. But he's still just like you said, like he makes dumb decisions on the base path. I don't know, everybody says how great of a defensive outfielder he is. I see him make mistake after mistake out there. Again, I don't want to badmouth him because he's playing better. He's probably a better option than Marsh, who I'm still not crazy about. So he's playing better. What else could you say?
Yeah. And Bohm, we're starting to see a comeback from Bohm as far as not power, but
that's another guy that's not showing power,
right? But he's hitting the ball now. So are we back in on Bohm, or we still need to see power from him? Is that a guy you potentially can move at the deadline?
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, the thing, the pop, but they're like middle of the pack, I think, in the league as far as home runs right now. Schwarber's leading the league, but they're top 5 in batting average and on base percentage, but they're not like top 5 in runs. I don't even know if they're top 10 in runs because you're not getting the home run behind them to knock 3 guys in at a time. So that's definitely hurting them, and they're still managing to win games. So I don't know that Bohm's going to be. I mean, is he more appealing to somebody now than he was in the offseason? He's got to start playing a lot better at the plate for that to happen. I just don't know that he'll elevate back to a level where it's like, okay, we can get something really good for him if we don't want to hold on to him at the trade deadline.
See, I always thought a trade of Bohm happens in the offseason. I don't think it happens during the year.
Yeah.
But Rafael Devers, now he seems like a pig to me. Like he's like a malcontent. But I mean, Boston might look to trade him now.
I mean, that's the kind of thing you would maybe look at. Like you had, what was it? It was a Garcia Parra for Manny.
Omar Garcia Parra?
Yeah, they. Oh no, Manny was already on Boston, but they swapped out Garcia Parra for somebody the year they won the World Series, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So like you could, I mean, they might make a move like, you could see a move like that.
But didn't he say he don't want to play Didn't he had some comment about
he don't want to play first?
He does want to play certain positions. That's the problem.
certain positions.
So like, he didn't want to. So they signed Bregman from Houston and said he was going to play third base, and Devers said, well, I don't want to DH. Then he DH. Now they're saying I don't want to play first base, but he started off the year like 0 for like 20 something, or
we had like 15 strikeouts.
There's something mentally not right. I mean, listen, what did I pay him? 200? How many hundreds of millions?
He just signed a huge contract.
I mean, give me a break. You don't want to play for you're being a baby because you didn't want to play DH, and then you agreed to DH. Now they want you to play first, and now you're being a baby about it.
I mean, the only way, if they thought that the personalities we have in the clubhouse could kind of keep him under control, because I really know, like in Boston, who the clubhouse leader is right now, because all the veterans are pretty much out of there, right? So I don't even know who would be the leader there that could keep that kind of thing under control, like a Dykstra or Dalton did in '93. But
sometimes you don't even need that. It's the player is just like so sour on the organization he's on that just getting to start with another organization. Like he might still have it in him, and he's just being a baby with that organization.
I mean, it could be.
I don't know. But.
I mean, it's like are you like look at I'm not sure baseball, but like look at let's say Jimmy Butler. He's a hell of a player. He wears that as welcome in 2 or 3 seasons with any organization. So if you're confident that you can get a championship in that 2 or 3 window, sure, you take the shot. But eventually, he's not going to be happy. Now, Devers hasn't produced to that level, that type of player, but he's had some good seasons. I mean, if you're trying to win now, yeah, you could make that move. It would probably have to be a lot to give up, I would think. Bowman, I don't know what else would have to maybe do that.
Well, if you're taking on his big,
you're taking the contract on, and if Boston's not playing him, then you kind of have him over a barrel. But there might be better offers out there if they're willing to just deal him. So that's what you got to compete with. I don't even know where Boston's at in the standings to know. I have a team you could look at for trades, but I don't know what other questions you got, so I'm not going to jump to that.
Yeah, let me just do the little thing on Harper, and then maybe we finish with the trades, or like moves if you had something. But yeah, I know Jason alluded to Harper, and saying he's struggling. Jimmy, you also alluded to Harper, and the easy answer is, I mean, he's going to play to the back of his base. He's going to figure it out. Harper's getting older now. He's got many injuries, whether it's his back, he had Tommy John, he has that kind of violent swing. Like, is there a chance that we don't see the Harper that we've seen, and it's only May? And I think Harper is still a good enough baseball player, even if he were to kind of diminish a little. Like he's still going to get on base. He's still going to get, figure out a way to get there. But do some of the power numbers? Do we lose some of his power numbers? Is that a possibility? Like, is that on your radar, or is it Harper's going to figure it out and he's back? He's going to be fine, Jason.
Well, so I guess my question is, are we going to see 45 home runs and 120 RBIs and 280, 290? I don't think so. But are you going to see 35 home runs and maybe 280 and 100 RBIs. Yeah, he's. I mean, what is he? 32 now? 31 or 32?
32, but he's been playing
32.
since he's 18. He's been in
Oh
the
yeah,
league
he's
since
been
he's
around.
18.
It's
He's
his
been around the
14th
block
year
for
in the
sure.
league.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that's a lot.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you're going to see in the 40s anymore, but mid 30s, with 100 RBIs and 280, 290. I think you could see that.
But is it fair, and then Jimmy, is to just say he's going to figure it out? Or, I mean, is it like the people that are saying, like, with Harper, we're going to get the whole
He
season?
goes. He goes in the ruts. He's going in the ruts
Oh,
before.
for sure. But does he start it? This is the worst start he's ever been. I mean, he goes in mid-season ruts. He goes in end-of-season ruts. He did it last year or the year before, then picked in the playoffs. He was, back to being Harper.
Right.
This is the first year I think we've seen it this bad. If you go by like OPS, like some of those numbers. Chalky, what do you think?
I mean, what concerns me is that potentially, of course, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to pull it out because, I mean, you just look at his numbers. But by the way, you've been in the league a long time. At the end of this year, it'll be as many years in Philly as it was in Washington, which still doesn't seem like he's been here that long. But if you look at his last 162 games from last year into this year, or the last 90 game, whatever, how we break it down, like it's not a good set of numbers. So it's a rut that was in the end of last year, and it's a rut that's beginning this year. So yeah, 14 seasons, 32 injuries. It's going to add up at some point. So I don't want to go there and say you can't expect him to work his way out of it, but those numbers all speak for themselves. And he's got 1,690 games under his belt as a major league player. He's played mostly full seasons on a lot of these years. I mean, 14 years is a good run for anybody in the major leagues playing at a high level. And because he started young, maybe he's done younger than you would hope. I mean, he might be tough to get to. He might be stretching 30 this year for home runs. It's possible.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not sure of the answer. Is this the first year? The last 2 years, did he not start the season?
Last year he started.
Yeah,
He started
the year before, obviously,
I know
he
he
did not. He did not. Yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe last year he didn't start. Maybe it's just
No, he started pretty strong last year, and then they got hurt a little bit before the All-Star break, I think, and then I see if I can find his individual stats. But he was like, I mean, Ohtani was the MVP, but he was like right behind Ohtani, like as far as like an MVP candidate for like the first 2 months of the season or so.
I mean, we see it all the time in sports. I mean, guys have it until they don't have it, and obviously Embiid is a guy. He went from. I mean, he has a track record, but he goes from what he did this year, who nobody saw coming. Like, I'm trying to think of baseball players. I mean, Pujols was pretty old at the time. I think he just completely lost it right when he got moved to Anaheim. But you do see it. I mean, so I think it's the same thing with like he just can't. We can only watch what we watch. We can't predict. I mean, we can predict. I mean, that's part of what we do. But we, like you can't just give him the benefit of the doubt because you give him the benefit of the doubt.
There's no two ways about it. He's been brutal. I just think it's too early to say I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
I'm not concerned yet. I mean, if it's the All-Star break and he's still like this, then there's a problem. But
yeah, so his first month star numbers aren't. Well, it's a little below, but so like last year through the end of April, he was hitting 245 with 6 home runs, which is, now we're in the middle of May almost. He's got 6 home runs. May is where he turned it on last year. He hit 7 home runs, 24 RBIs, hit 313, and then he hit 374 with 7 home runs, 16 RBIs in June. So that's when, and then he got hurt end of June. So June 27th to July 9th, he was out, and then he didn't break. Yeah, his power numbers definitely went down after he didn't hit more than 4 home runs in a month for the rest of the year after he got hurt last year.
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically we're a little more than a week into May, so it's still early.
Yeah, all right, Chalky, you alluded to some deals you thought were a possibility.
Well, I just think when we say, well, who are you going to trade with and who's going to be out there, and you don't know early season. Baltimore is one of the worst teams in the league, and they were a team that we were very high on, a number of us on this podcast. So they might be a team you can make a deal with closer to the deadline. And there's you could probably get some outfield help. The rotation is light, but I don't know if their bullpen's that great either. We could probably get the guys back we traded last year.
Yeah, I was gonna say half of them are on from our
I
team.
know. But you might be able to get a bat from Baltimore. It depending on how that goes.
Yeah, I mean Baltimore's a great team to stink for the league because they don't need an excuse to start selling off players. You know that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they got Youngtown as it is, so their window is going to be maybe a little larger, so they could have an off year and maybe go for some prospects that are going to be highly regarded.
How's that closer that was out last year that's back now this year, Batista? What's his numbers look like? Do you know offhand?
The general?
That could be a possibility if they decide to sell him off.
I'm looking up now. Statistics.
Baltimore. Yeah, Jason, what's the leash you give on Ranger too? You know, how many more starts do you give him before you start to say like something's got?
Well, I mean, the good thing is you have. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you have Taijuan Walker, who's pitched pretty good this year. So, like, if Ranger doesn't come around, I mean, obviously you got to give him more than one game. But if he doesn't come around eventually, then maybe you switch them up. You put Ranger in the bullpen and you make Walker start again. So you got to give him a handful of starts first.
Yeah. So Batista is 6 saves. I don't see a blown save on here, so he might not have blown any. 6 saves, 1.8 ERA.
So he's still really good.
So, yeah, it sounds solid. I mean, it sounds.
That's
so. I mean, hey, maybe that's a target for them.
Yeah, no blown.
Yeah,
no blown
at
saves.
At this point, bullpen has to be priority number one when it comes to making a move. You know, they do have arms. You know, they have Painter obviously at some point. Even an Abel, maybe Mick Abel can come to the bullpen when he first comes up if he's not look bad. So they have some options. And one of our concerns with the bullpen was, do they get to those options? You know, can they win enough games to get to those options? And so far they're 22-15, so they're getting the job done to get to that point. So,
yeah.
Anything else to close up here?
The other thing I was going to mention was, I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts on any of the guys down in AAA right now. There's some names that are making a little noise, but Painter just got his first appearance of the year. Look, 3 innings, but looked good. Crawford's hitting 300 plus now, and he's not really a top prospect, but this Kemp is tearing the cover off the ball. He's probably more of a 4A player, I would think.
That's the problem.
In my experience, guys like Kemp were like, who else was it? Huff. Wasn't Huff one of the guys? Like, those guys tear the ball off of minor league baseball.
Yeah, like Chalky said, they're not good enough for majors, but they're too good for AAA, basically. Right.
And that's what
I'd rather see them tear the ball in AA.
Right.
That's where the real prospects are,
But he can play a couple different positions, so I mean, I don't know if he's an option if somebody gets hurt again.
Maybe just
to see. And then Stubbs is hitting 300 down there, and Marchand's been very, very lackadaisical at the plate. So
were we talking about it where some has to do with the options that Stubbs has, right?
Marchand don't have options. But that's another thing. Chalky could be right that maybe you go get a backup catcher from somewhere. So, you know what I mean?
Maybe Marchand can't be used at this point.
Right. I mean, and we know Stubbs isn't good enough. So now, again, you don't have a legitimate backup catcher.
I mean, and you want to talk about Harper? We've said this with JT. I would look to see if I can get Harper more games sprinkled in at DH so he's not playing the field if you're worried about wear and tear on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they do want to limit their Schwarber left field spot.
Right.
Kind of hurts them. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Schwarber could do left field and not hurt you. So
yeah, you could throw in a day game against the Marlins or something. I don't know, but
he's been okay so far in left field. He hasn't hurt them.
No, he don't get to anything. There was like one game, the ball was like a blue. He didn't get to it.
No, it's basically I mean, Greg Luzinski back in the day, but um, yeah.
All right. Episode 156, Broad Street Hustle. Next week, I believe we're going to record on Tuesday, as we'll cover the PGA Championship and the Preakness. So we'll do a duo show for next week. Might have a special guest. Between the golf and horses, we have options. So it just depends on the calendar, but it'll be a early podcast with a Tuesday. We'll get it out, give you plenty of time to get your PGA. We'll listen for your PGA bets, and also obviously the Preakness. Usually when we do these Tuesday, Wednesdays for horse racing, there's a slew of 8,000 scratches, and by the time the
Oh
race goes,
God, could you imagine?
the race goes off, the opinions don't.
Luckily,
even matter.
they scratched Rodriguez already. He wasn't even entered
Yeah.
yet, and he's skipping the race.
So, but yeah, episode 156 will bring you next week's episode on Tuesday. Broad Street Hustle. Have a great night.